Hello friends, and welcome back for another video. In today's video we're going to be talking about yoga props, and I'm hoping that I can showcase a few of the yoga props that I have learned to love and utilize at every single practice over the years, and how my mindset has sort of shifted because I changed the way that I allow them to support me. So today I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that I have learned to utilize my own props in hopes that with your home practice you can actually utilize that information as well. Okay, without further ado, why don't we just dive right into it? All right, so the first thing that I thought that I would talk to you about, which is very common to use, which is your yoga blocks. Now with yoga blocks, there's just an infinite number of ways that you can utilize them. I personally have learned to love using them when it comes to alignment. So I will show you a couple of different clips that I have done in the past where I might be either in triangle, or I might be in warrior 2 or even warrior 3, where I would not necessarily look at using a block because I couldn't go into the full expression of that posture, but I would utilize that block because I wanted to create a little bit more stability and a little bit more endurance during that posture, during that sequence. So sometimes I find that you're not really utilizing the prop because you can't get into the posture, but you're utilizing it because you want to create more endurance and you want to actually activate the right muscle groups. And that's sort of when I started tuning into how, like, what areas of my body was actually contracting during a transition and during staying within each posture, then I started utilizing the props a lot more because I realized that they are not a crutch, but they are actually a support system. So I also love using the block. I'll just show you. I love it, just placing it down flat, and I usually place it on its highest setting here. And for the longest time I was actually using just this small little bolster because that's what I had at home. If you don't have this, you can also just use a larger pillow, and I used to just place it over such as this, and I would just lay down. And this would be my beautiful chest opener, which you will actually probably see examples of in some of my restorative practices. But for now, like, I just thought that I would show you like how useful it is. You can actually just use just the block on its own. I personally find that this is a little bit more harsh of a surface for me, so I always like to put something soft over it, just because it has the ability at that point to send your nervous system, your parasympathetic nervous system, the activation, so that you actually start to relax a little bit more. So this is what I wanted to share with you on blocks. Obviously with balancing postures, they're fantastic. Like, there's a million and one way to use them. I generally tend to use them during my flow sequences or during in Shavasana if I wanted to have a little bit more of an opening happening. Obviously you can also use them with shoulder stands where you play, or during bridge. Bridge is another excellent example of that. So let's take a look at, okay. So during bridge, you might be set up for bridge and you lift, and I like to actually just place it like this, and it becomes more of a restorative posture rather than a more active. And it's wonderful. It's really lovely that it provides you with that extra support. And then after that you lift, and then you can remove the block. With shoulder stand, I actually like to place it on the flat side, on like its lowest point, and then you just lift your legs. And again, during yin, this is fantastic if you're looking to literally just have some support underneath your bum, and you're supporting your sacrum, you're supporting your lumbar spine, so it's fantastic for that. Moving on. Let's move on to another most commonly used prop, and once again, I know that most of you will have this in your home, or you've used it during a yoga class at a studio. It's your strap. I highly recommend getting a strap. I didn't really see much of a point at first, and it's so funny, it's such an inexpensive tool, but I resisted using this for so long because it would always, I don't know, it must be my nemesis, but it would always trigger such insecurity every single time that I was invited to use a strap, because it just made me feel like I couldn't naturally move into that posture or maintain that posture, and that would always send a signal that I was somehow weak, or I just couldn't get there, or I was pushing too hard. And I realized over the years, once I actually got sent one with one of my purchases. I believe it was actually, I bought yoga blocks and then I got a free strap with it, and I started using it for my home practice and realized that it was never about being able to come into a posture or coming out of a posture, but rather it was more about just finding a way to maintain the integrity of the original posture the way that it was intended for. So what do I mean by that? Well, I end up utilizing it. So a great example of this is actually seated staff pose. Most people have a hard time even just leaving their legs straight like this, but when you use a strap, you can actually just place it over your feet. You activate your feet, you engage your leg, and like now we have like a really nice steady, and right away, like if you notice, my back is a lot straighter. So from here, if I breathe, and then I can exhale, but as I'm bending forward, I'm hinging from the hip rather than curving my back. So when you're looking at the integrity of the posture, it helps you maintain the integrity of that posture. And even if this is all I can do for today, no problem. So like the idea is not how far I can go, but the idea is that I'm actually activating the right muscle groups, because at that point, I can actually create more of a muscle memory within those muscle groups, and then they get activated more and more and more, and then you're able to move into the full expression of that posture. So balancing postures, once again, you've probably seen it. I will demonstrate it just so that you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So with standing posture, is a little bit different. You put your foot through, and you can bend, and then you can just, place your foot through. But then even you can just stay here, and it already maintains like that balance of how your hip is. It allows your pelvis to be in a neutral position, or to allow it to remain straight. And if you're doing a kick out, you can actually create a little bit more of stability rather than just allowing just your leg and everything else to contract together. So I find that, let's do it to the side as well. So whenever you're like lifting, it allows a lot more control rather than just you doing that by yourself and trying to hold it and maintain it without your hips actually dropping. So this is one of the reasons why I love it. Let's move on to bolsters. So I do have two size bolsters here. One of them is a smaller size. The other one is this big behemoth guy. And honestly, this in itself took me maybe about a year of convincing for me to actually purchase it. And it was an investment, and it took me a little bit, and honestly, I am so glad that I did. So if you're still thinking about, or if you're still contemplating whether or not you should buy a larger size bolster, I highly recommend it, because there's just so many different ways that you can utilize it. But that's not to say that if you have the smaller sized one, then it's not, that it wouldn't support your practice. It would absolutely support your practice. I've seen people utilize the smaller bolsters even just as a normal chest opener. The same way that I showed you the blocks earlier, you can place it in between your shoulder blades and just allow it to be just like a nice natural progression of your both your thoracic spine moving forward, as well as, like it allows your shoulders and your pecs to kind of open up a little bit. You can utilize the little guy when you can place it underneath your knees. So If you're laying down in Shavasana and you do have really tight hamstrings, you might find that you place it just right underneath your knees, or shove it a little bit closer to your buttocks, and that way your hamstrings are actually a little bit more supported, and then you can lay down. So as you lay down, it just allows your pelvis and your hips to just open up a little bit more naturally without feeling like your back or your low back. Like if you're looking at my low back, you can see that it doesn't feel like the joints itself are hanging, which is one of the reasons why I absolutely love it. Now with the larger bolster, a little bit of a different story. I love using this obviously for restorative practices. I've seen many postures and many asanas where this can be utilized, where you can literally just lay over it. You can create like a little bit of a tent and you can lay over it. So I personally love using it at the end of my practice for a chest opener where I'm all bolstered up. I can utilize my my blanket, my eye pillow, and I know that I'm okay with staying there for a longer period of time. Like I'm okay with staying there for between 2 to 10 minutes versus, you know, staying there for about 10 breaths. That makes a big difference when you have more of a restorative practice versus a flow practice where it's more about movement and more about the flow rather than about giving enough time for your mind to kind of start slowing down. So these are the two bolsters that I wanted to share with you. Now let's move on to blankets, and they each serve a different purpose. It took me a little while. So this I picked this up. This is from Lolé. I picked this up a few years ago, and it's a thin, very narrow little guy. As you can tell, it's not very wide, so this is not really designed for you to use it as an actual blanket. I personally love using this thin little guy for, you can just kind of fold it up like this and put it underneath your neck if you need a little bit extra support. You can also, the way that I like to use it actually during practice is if you have any issues with your knees, then you can place it down like this, because as you can tell, it's about the width of your mat. So this is more utilized as something that will protect your mat, but also you can utilize it during hot yoga if you go to a hot yoga practice. Probably not right now, but maybe in the future if they do open up. But I also just love it for normal yoga practices, for home practices. I love it because it protects your knees. So as you can tell, like it creates a nice little cushion for your knees. If you go into table and you have some issues with your knees, this is a perfect way where it just provides some extra cushioning, and then you're not wearing away the meniscus, you're not wearing away the bursas that are around your knees to keep it protected. So it's wonderful for that. This guy, this larger one, it's a little bit thicker. I love utilizing this more as you can tell, it's a lot larger and a lot wider. So here we go, it's a lot bigger. This is more designed for restorative practices, once again, or just simply for Shavasana at the very end of each of your practice, more for meditation, where if you find that like your foot gets cold or whatever, then it just provides you with that nice little cushion. It just keeps you nice and safe, nice and protected. So I love it for that. Can you utilize this under your neck? Absolutely you can. I personally don't, because I like the thinner, smaller one. It's a little bit more, it's just easier to carry around. And then that brings me to my last beautiful prop, which has become one of my favorites actually, which is your eye pillow. This one is, I believe it's filled with buckwheat, and it smells like lavender. So we have a nice little beautiful little silk cover, which you can wash obviously. And then here, this guy, you take this, you put it in your microwave for about 20 seconds or so. It heats up, it holds the heat, but it's not going to be burning. And then you place it back into the cover, like so. And then you put this over your eyes. So the weight that's in here as well as a little bit of the heat that it provides, it automatically sends your nervous system the message that it's time to shut down, it's time to slow down, it's time to go within. It definitely has a very deep calming effect. Can you make it your own? I believe you can, but I ended up picking this up through Half Moon, and I'm so glad that I did, because I've been using it every single time that I practice, every single time that I'm on my mat. This guy comes out, and I utilize this during Shavasana. It's extremely calming, and I'm so glad that I have it. So if you have the opportunity to pick this up, I would highly recommend it. Okay, now that we've gone through all of that, basically this is all I wanted to share with you guys. I wanted to kind of just showcase the different ways that you can utilize some of the props if you do have them. One of the biggest detriments really with yoga props is that you have them, but then you don't know how to use them, or how you're planning on using them. So if you have your props, please use them. I think you're going to enjoy them, and you're going to learn how it allows you to evolve your practice each time you utilize your props. So I would love to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments below, what was your favorite prop and how long have you been using it for? And this is all I want to share with you. I hope you have yourself a wonderful one, and I will see you guys again in my next video.